Hello, everybody. We are here outside of the McCall Center, just a few hundred feet from Arizona Stadium, where the UCLA Bruins are in town this weekend to face off against their Arizona Wildcats at 7:30 p.m. Jordan, how are you today?
I'm doing good. It's a good morning. It's beautiful outside.
Yeah, well, let's get right into it. Last week, UCLA is coming off a 42-23 loss to ASU. The game was in California. It was at home for UCLA. They were favorites, but things just didn't go their way. What'd you see from that game?
Yeah, looking at the box score, I think it's really surprising to see how the game went the way it was. Both teams rushing and passing stats are pretty similar. But ASU just got in the end zone, and that's just something that UCLA couldn't figure out how to do for some reason. There wasn't tons of turnovers. So yeah, they just got in the end zone, and sometimes that's the way games can get out of hand when you don't get in the end zone and the other team does.
Yeah, it seemed like UCLA, every time they got in the red zone, they couldn't finish the drive, with a successful touchdown, and it seems like it hurt them. It really slowed their momentum down. As we know, they've had a pretty good season. They beat LSU, and they've had a pretty good season, but, they also beat Stanford.
It's their second loss, though, too. They lost to Fresno State.
Yeah, and Stanford beat Oregon, as we know, last week. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, this is a really weird game because it's kind of a do-or-die for UCLA. Right now, they're 2-2. They're not ranked for the first time in the season. They're 16-point favorites coming into this game. Do you think Arizona could cover that spread? Or do you think it's too much?
I think they could. I think it's probably a two-score game.
I'm just not confident in Chip Kelly's past and now him that he could cover over a 10-point spread,
Okay, his NFL past is different from his college past.
Just overall, he's burned me so many times.
Okay, I get that, but I think he's still a good coach. It's also his only third or fourth year still there, so he's still. It took him a few years to get Oregon up and going, so I don't know. I think it's a little quick. They don't look very good, though, especially defensively in some of these games, and just the inconsistency is kind of very peculiar, especially losing to Fresno State within 2 weeks of beating LSU. So we'll see. And last week's loss was also at home, so we'll see what they do outside of the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, and let's move on and let's get into Arizona. The Wildcats, at Jed Fish's press conference on Monday, he said they practiced Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday. They were on their bye week. Coaches were out recruiting. Also, something I mentioned in the updated depth chart, as we know, Jordan McLeod is the starter. Mm-hmm. Gunnar Cruz backing him up. Will Plummer is banged up. McLeod coming off a nearly 300 total yard performance in the loss to Oregon 2 weeks ago. But the thing that caught my eye was Joyner, the former number one receiver from 2 years ago, is now listed at the third position in the X spot, the X wide receiver spot behind Booby Curry. What do you think about that whole thing?
I think we were talking about that in our podcast, just how surprising that was. The last 2 years, he was kind of undoubtedly the number one kind of overall wide receiver. And I think him being the number 3 just in that spot, because I think it's the Z wide receiver position, which is kind of more so the slot. Cunningham's number 1 in that. So I think you could say he's easily the fourth wide receiver on the roster.
And really, the coaching, sometimes new coaching changes, new systems help certain players, but it doesn't seem like it helped Joyner at all. And it also, getting injured never helps anyone unless you're, but even that's why it's weird to me, because before the injury, he was, that number 1 to 2 guy with Barry Hill, and even ahead of Barry Hill, because Barry Hill is just starting to break out this season,
Definitely. And all those 3 guys also, specifically at that X spot, Cunningham, or Curry, Barry Hill, and Joyner, they all had their names in the transfer portals too. And so I think it's interesting. I'm kind of surprised at some point we haven't really heard Joyner talk about it really a ton.
Yeah, he hasn't spoke to the media. I believe since
I don't know if that's
training
just.
camp.
I don't know if that's just because he hasn't been able to play in games.
Yeah,
or,
I think that's more of it. Just because he hasn't been active on the field, so there's no reason besides the uncertainties, which they probably want to keep a little quiet.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. They also still have only played 4 games and only played one Pac-12 game against what we thought was the best Pac-12 team. We don't really know right now at this point.
Yeah, the Pac-12 seems to be tearing themselves apart here as they normally do.
Year in and year out.
Yep, they always do. But moving on, Jordan, is there anything that you're excited to see, a player that you think could break out or have a great game here against UCLA?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see McLeod against not one of the best defenses in the country. It'll be interesting to see how he uses his arm and his feet and see what they've learned from the last 2 weeks of all those 5 interception mistakes, and most of them happen in the red zone. So if they can cut those down and they can score, then could get to a point where things could look just like they did last week at the Rose Bowl if we decide to get in the end zone.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, a thing where if they play a similar game with the Oregon, against Oregon,
like defensively?
No, offensively.
Offensively.
But if the defense this time could come up clutch and get more stops. The defense did get stops, don't get me wrong, against Oregon.
They also
early
gave up
on,
big plays, though.
But in the fourth quarter, they just, the defense wore down, and they had trouble staying in the game with Oregon.
Yeah, I agree. I think defensively it'll be a big thing, especially the DTR. DTR's kind of...
I really like him.
Yeah, he's kind of a threat on every play, and he's just kind of the same way in McLeod. He's just inconsistent at times.
Yeah, I have 2 different feelings about this game. One feeling, I think UCLA could come here and win like 45-10 and 45-14. But then another thing with the fans, I do think that I wanted to get your take on this. I think this could be the highest attendance rate by the fans here at Arizona Stadium this season. What do you think about that?
I think it'll be tough to top that first game just with all the hype coming into it, because U of A is 0-4. But it's also Parents Weekend, so it'll be interesting to see how many people will come out. I would not be surprised either way.
Yeah, so Jordan, let's get into our picks here. Where are you going with this game? Do you think Arizona can cover the 16-point spread? Do you think they could even win? What do you think's going to happen here?
I'm going to give my prediction that they do not cover the spread. I think UCLA wins 30-14.
I'm going to go 38-17 is my final prediction. UCLA obviously covering that spread and winning the game. But everyone, be sure to follow us on Twitter at Wildcat Sports, our Instagram at Daily Wildcat for all of our game day coverage leading up to this Saturday's game versus UCLA at 7:30. And it also will be a whiteout, so show out at Arizona Stadium. Thank you.
Thank you.